Okay, hello everyone. This will be probably the most important video on my channel. It will set up the tune for the rest of it. I would like to start it with the famous joke which I read in the comment section actually. Here it is. Somebody copied it here, a Soviet era joke. A CIA agent and KGB agent talk to each other. The CIA agent says, USSR truly has the best propaganda. And the KGB agent responds, what are you talking about? The US has the most incredible propaganda. To which the CIA agent responds, what do you mean? The US doesn't have any propaganda. This is a comment for the video which is called the US Government Not So Secret Propaganda Department, which I think is a truly amazing video. I recommend everyone to watch it. Basically, this joke is kind of on point. The US propaganda is extremely subtle and extremely elaborate. However, here they're mostly talking about some sort of, a right-wing type of propaganda, like this militaristic nationalism, that type of ideas. Today I would like to talk about propaganda of a different kind, basically the left-wing propaganda, which turned out to be even more subtle and even more elaborate. I recently was watching some interview with Tucker Carlson, maybe it was on Lex Freedom, I don't remember, and he said something along the following lines, that he couldn't even imagine media being used as a tool of control. And I thought, what do you mean, Tucker? Like, how you couldn't even imagine it? How it could be so naive? Like, what else media should do? Like, what do you expect from them? Like, wasn't it obvious? And then I start thinking, well, me and him have very different background. We were like born and raised in different countries with different attitude towards the government, the media, the institutions. So, well, I should treat him fairly, right, in this respect. And in fact, it turned out that I'm actually quite arrogant, because I myself made a similar mistake. Growing in Russia, it was hard for me to even imagine that academia could be used as a tool of propaganda and as a tool of control, because this is seemed like pretty unique US or so-called Western liberal democracies phenomena. So today I'm planning to talk about that. In order to understand how it works, we need to understand the structure and the true nature of academia. So I decided to start with this video by Sabine where she reads the letter which was sent to her confidentially. So we don't know whether that is real, and basically we have to take her word for it, as she says. But it's quite illuminating. So let me just play you, and then I'll comment on this.
I want to read you an email that I was asked to keep confidential. I've been thinking about this for a long time, but I now believe that reading it to you will go some way to explain why I'm worried about the status of scientific research generally, but especially in the foundations of physics. I received this email about 7 years ago after I published a comment in Nature Physics titled "Science Needs Reason to be Trusted." In it, I explained how I lost trust in scientific self-correction after I realized how much of what's published in the foundations of physics is nonsense and continues to be nonsense. This email came from someone who I've met a few times but don't know in any depth, and who at the time worked at a top institution in the United States. To honor the request of confidentiality, I've removed some details. Hi Sabine, I'm if you remember me. I'm not using my work email. The topic is a bit delicate and I hope that our conversation will remain confidential. I'm contacting you regarding your recent paper in Nature, which made a lot of noise. First of all, congratulations on a nice paper. If you wanted to attract attention, you managed to do this. Actually, I'd like to ask you next time, think not only about short-term personal benefits, but about the community in general. You understand what consequences your publication might bring for our community? What are all these BSM model builders with exaggerated self-opinion going to do afterwards? What about experimentalists who survive hiding inside big multi-TV collaborations? Can you offer them all any decent employment alternatives? Some of them have families and young children. Some of them are already too old to get employment elsewhere.
First of all, about the statement, some of them have families and young children. Well, everybody have families and young children, and everybody wants to feed them. And people on the market work really hard to provide for their families. So this comment doesn't make sense. You should earn your money. You're not entitled for them. If you stay in academia as just some sort of normie who just want to get his paycheck because he has no other way to live, well, you have nothing to do with science. So this is really sad. But let's listen to them, it reveals more.
For some of them, academia is the only way to get US visa. If you like, yes, what we created is a bubble, but it helps thousands of those guys and their families not to die from hunger. We all do the same stuff and have some trade secrets. For example, I'm one of the authors of the so-called model. Pretty useless stuff, old refurbished with a couple of new blows and whistles. But if people buy this and it helps them to get grants, who cares? For people who pay us, all we do is just noise. They have zero idea that elementary particles exist. They pay us from public funds, not from their own, and basically pay for something cool, some new crazy hype, which they need either to include into their science spending reports or, in case of universities, to attract students. Your paper made a lot of noise and most likely will affect redistribution of HEP funds towards other areas, but I doubt that you'll be able to suggest and implement any organizational changes. Also, any changes of quality criteria which would demonstrate uselessness of somebody's work will have zero chance of approval. I understand that all what I wrote above might sound a bit harsh, sorry for this, but this is how our society is built, and this is not only a problem in the HEP community, but also exists in all other areas. My heart is bleeding.
Yeah, the key thing for us will be today that this problem also exists in other areas. And in fact, I'll try to show you that in other areas it's way worse, which Sabine usually don't talk about.
When I regularly see bright and intelligent persons with independent ways of thinking leaving academia or getting kicked out, whereas obedient idiots remain. But there's nothing we can do. Those who get kicked out usually find better opportunities outside of academia. Those who remain in academia accept the rules and enjoy the comfort of academic life. Of course, sometimes there are exceptions, like string theorists Smolin and White, but I doubt you'd like to share their destiny.
Okay. So yeah, I think we've heard enough, but let me kind of elaborate on this more.
These are the classic crew tricks by Mott and Bow.
Add. Okay, so let me try to share the screen here. Yeah, so a little bit more details how it works. What is the key parts? So let's start with how the money flows, right? We'll follow the money, right? Basically, we have politicians on top, who are basically allocating certain resources to scientific needs, right? Below them we'll have some sort of, grant committees. Okay. Now these grant committees decide who will receive grants, right? How to redistribute this money on top. Below that we'll have senior researchers. Let me call them like this. Who are trying to get the grant. Now below them you will have postdocs and some PhD students, right? Who again would like to get a position to work with senior researchers, and senior researchers would like to hire a person to work on his topic, right? Now we also have universities who would like to hire prestigious researchers to boost the popularity, because they're making money from attracting students, and students would like to study in a place where they have a possibility for some either scientific growth, meaning growing academia, or just benefiting from talking to famous scientists, right? So universities need these prestigious senior researchers. Also we have journals where papers are getting published, right? And I don't know, probably I should mention that there should be also somewhere public, right, which is technically what gives money to politicians, right? And there should be some sort of link here. Technically public should be on top, right? But we all know this connection is kind of a joke, so I'm going to like question mark. Now basically it's clear how it works, right? Senior researchers want to get grants, want to hire students, students want to work for researchers, and to get grant you need your papers published in a journal, right? Universities want to hire the most prestigious researchers for the faculty. Okay, so yeah, here is an important point. The grant committee is also made out of some of the senior researchers, right? They're getting appointed by the peers to judge and evaluate other people's work. So now let's study the dynamics of the system, how it will work in practice. So basically, the dynamics is what I called waves of hype. Basically, imagine there is some idea emerged, usually like a new good paper published by some senior researchers, or like who has recognition in this field, has built up good reputation by previous good works, right? So he published a new paper with some new idea. Again, it might be even relatively good. It might be not very good. It will not that matter that much. So you had an idea, let's say somewhere here, draw it like this. Some idea emerged, and now what? He has already recognition, so people know that he'll be able to get grants for this idea, right? So other people, other senior researchers think, okay, we need to also publish papers about this topic, right? Let's just join the this movement right now. So this idea kind of spread to other senior researchers, and now the members on the grant committee think, oh, okay, so this idea is becoming more popular, so we'll give more money to it. And now also the senior researchers, they want to hire postdoc to work on these ideas, hire PhD students to work on these ideas. And postdoc and PhD students, yeah, they need to get positions, right? They have only temporary positions, right? So they have to constantly care about the future employment. So they also think, oh, okay, I'm going to work on this area, right? Because I will get hired right now. So this kind of hype spreads to them too, right? And journals also, and they care about something popular, right? They want some sensations. They just naturally like hype as well. So they tend to publish more on this topic. They tend to give the preference to them. So basically, yeah, and universities, they see it and they hire these people too. Right? They spread to universities. So now this topic became mainstream. In fact, at some point, some of the people from senior researchers could make their way towards grant committee, right? And now they are like already directly giving funds to the colleagues who work on this field, right? Because they think it's important, right? And they're getting somewhere. Basically, that's how the whole the whole body, or like significant body of researchers get engaged in certain movement, right? Usually it lasts around like 2 to 5 years until it's kind of naturally wanes down and gets elbowed out by like a new idea, something else. I want to say it right away that like Sabine have like very negative perspective here, but I would like to mention that it's not even true that everybody think about it as something bad necessarily. For example, there is a series of interviews by Freeman Dyson and he specifically said somewhere that he could only work on certain topic for like 2 to 3 years. He just needs a change of field every 2 to 3 years. So probably for him it will be quite perfect. Some people just enjoy new topics every couple of years. They are glad that, you know, we tried this idea, we played with it, we moved on to something new. Now we are, you know, putting all our effort there, right? And we are working together on it right now. And it's good that so many researchers are attracted to this field because we can do more together, right? So that's one point of view. But of course, a lot of people are kind of upset with the state of affairs. For example, my friend he's working in math even, so the field which is supposed to be more rigorous and supposed to have high quality of papers because they require, like, you know, rigorous mathematical proof. He says that he suffers from this attitude. He said that people are rushing to publish papers as fast as they can because, you know, you need to get a position, you need to get grant, otherwise it'll be too late. No time to read. He said they're just publishing papers without reading them. They're just having obvious mistakes. And he also brought to my attention the interview with, I think, Peter Higgs at the, did I remember his name correctly? Okay, so those person who discovered the Higgs mechanism, one of those people. And he said that he would never be able to succeed in modern day academia just because he was working for something important for like 10 years, so a much longer period, and he wouldn't be able to survive in such environment. Basically, it de-incentivizes deep research, deep thinking. It de-incentivizes independent thinking, basically following your own ideas instead of, you know, whatever is popular right now. And yeah, for those people, it's somewhat hard to survive. As this letter mentioned, yeah, they basically have to comply with these rules or they have to get out. I would like to show you the video where analogous problem is considered. Yeah, so just also, yeah, one of my favorite videos on YouTube actually. It contains like an interview of two famous CIA officers, or like relatively famous, and where they talk about the problem which they're facing within the CIA, and the phenomena is quite similar. Basically, what I described is somewhat universal for all type of bureaucracies. The talented independent people getting kicked out, and those who bend the knee to bureaucracy remain. They talk about one example. There was some guy who was working like in some Middle East department and he was asking for promotion, and his boss, who was literally like good and talented, she said, well, you don't deserve a promotion. In fact, I think you're so talented that you are fired. And he basically go around the agency a little bit and find a job somewhere in the like White House advisory office, and where he made some good connections, and eventually he got appointed to become her boss. And then he fired her So basically, and then he moved up and later, and then I don't remember. He made really good career, and this woman who was like really talented and bright has to get out. So this is a pretty general situation, and in fact, it's rare that people speak out because indeed they are already just doing their job, like working for their paycheck, and nobody wants to lose their paycheck. It's pretty hard. That's why pretty hard to just break your life like this, and that's why we have so little amount of whistleblowers, right? And whenever somebody came out, everybody just shocked. Oh, why nobody else talked about it? Like, is there something so horrible going on there? You're probably lying to us. Like, it couldn't be true. Well, because most of the people within bureaucracy, they already there, not out of not because of their ideas and their inspiration, but just because they just want to feed their kids, like this letter says us. Nobody wants to lose their paycheck. In fact, if you even look at John Kiriakou's story himself, what happened, he discovered terrible rights violation in the CIA, right? Enhanced interrogation programs, right? Human torture. And he didn't immediately blew the whistle. He didn't rush to intelligence oversight committee saying something like, oh, you know what's going on there, it's just horrible, I have to report it. No, he just walked away from it. He said, I don't want to participate in it, you do whatever you want, right? And only after he realized that they're going to make him a scapegoat, that he's going to lose his paycheck anyway, and will end up even worse, because he turned out to be the only person who said no, and they were planning to frame him, basically. He decided to blow the whistle. So basically, the most moral person within the CIA still only came out after he had no other choice. That's kind of sad. And I feel like the academia became some sort of bureaucracy as well. Basically, people publish these papers as some sort of memos, right? You need to get enough publications for certain topics to just be accepted in the next stage of hierarchy. They're not truly written to be read in some cases. Okay, so I actually, I'm planning to end with the part of the general structure in these areas like high energy physics, and would like only to point out that at least for most part it's kind of benign for the general public, right? It's just kind of, yeah, they're doing something there. It's like maybe they will discover something good, maybe no. Like, and in the previous video I even discussed that it never even cost that much money. It's like, okay, couple of $1 billion, but that's not that's kind of missing the point. Yeah, because that's what I'm upset about in all the Sabine's videos. Like, she's trying to frame some sort of just trying to frame high energy communities as like the worst because they're decoupled from reality. That's why it's so bad. But in fact, even this email person mentioned, that this unknown author, that this problem exists in other areas, and in fact in other areas the consequences are way more dramatic, and the money spent on them is also way bigger. Just look at the life sciences fund. You see, $40 billion. Why do you think government pours such amount of money in life sciences? You probably already start to guess what happens. Basically, in this setup of high energy physics, you probably noticed that none of this research truly matters to the public. In a sense, the public doesn't care about the specific result, right? And public might care in general to know something about high energy physics, right? Like, oh, what's Higgs boson? Like, how the universe works there, right? If you know, the string theory will turn out to be, inapplicable to real world, and something else replaces it, public will say, well, okay, fine, like, right? So thanks for telling us, keep doing it, right? And in fact, none of this research is important for policymaking. Like, none of this affect the policymaking because of this. You can't apply string theory to write some bill and do something with it. And other important aspect of it is that researchers' own political views also don't really matter, right? Oh, it doesn't matter if the researcher is like left wing, right wing, he's just doing string theory. He might write good papers about string theory, quantum field theory, regardless of his political views. In many cases, talking to people about science, I don't even know the political views, like at all, just not revealed. This all will become untrue in any non STM, non-technological areas of science. Basically, anything which anyhow could relate to the policymaking, which any social sciences, basically. Basically the new problem will emerge, and I'll like to show you what's going to happen. Let me go back. To a diagram. I will redraw it for any form of social sciences, because there will be some adjustments. We'll still have politicians, still have senior researchers, grant committees, so on, postdocs, PhD students. Well, they might have their own differences, but the idea is the same. Okay, but now we have actually new players, right? We have agencies, right? Basically, bureaucracies, actual bureaucracies. They're kind of in between the government and academia. So they certainly have a power to initiate violence, right? They're enforcement agencies in some sense. But they also could do their own research, like say CDC, FDA, and they also employ as a bureaucrat top researchers from here. Yeah, and we have the public as usual. yeah, somewhere here. But one important addition on top of the one which you already added, which is the agencies, is the media, right? Let me put it somewhere here. Okay, so now we could ask what will be the dynamic in this case if we are talking about some highly controversial, politicized topics, politicized research. First of all, what are the political biases, right? Well, more or less, we know what they are. So people who do social sciences, they are mostly leftists, right? So this is leftists, right? People on grant committees are selected from senior researchers, so they are leftists as well. Universities, at least those who are in position of power there, of course, you know who they are. Members of the journals' editorial boards, they're also leftist. People who work in the bureaucracies, well, it's obvious, right? They are always pro market interventions by their whole, it's like their whole life. They wouldn't exist. They wouldn't even have this job, right? Media, again, media exists of all sorts, right? Of course, we have the whole spectrum of biases, but we'll talk about the leftist media here and how they will interact with academia. And politicians, yeah, they're leftists too. Even Republicans, right? Republicans basically now support the same market interventions as Democrats, except for they just want to make them effective and want to make them for American people, right? But basically, if they agree, they support welfare, they support all these programs. It's like Donald Trump said, I'll keep Obamacare, I'll just make it effective, I'll make it better. And how? Well, your concepts of plans, right? So now basically you could say the whole point of it is that people on top in the agencies and in the political sphere, right, they making a request for certain consensus, right? Because they're seeking moral sanctions for their market interventions. And these leftist people in academia, right, they willfully satisfy this request. Now, in this previous analogy, you could say that these waves of hype, which I was talking about, they're now charged with these leftist ideas, and they will tend to move in a certain direction, yeah, drift in the direction of applied external field. And this external field is this funding of a certain narrative, which is now in demand by politicians, people in the agencies, and the media. Basically, the goal of the whole process is to manufacture the scientific consensus in order to then manufacture public consent for proposed intervention in terms of Edouard Bernays, like he was calling it, the father of propaganda. For example, I remember Dr. Paul Offit, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but I'll make a separate video about him in this case. In his recent CNN interview, he admitted that this story, this downplay of natural immunity during the pandemic was basically the idea of a couple of top bureaucrats here in the agencies and some in the political sphere. They just thought that the message will look better, right? They were afraid that if we allow exceptions for those who already got the virus, people start to think that maybe vaccine is not as good as we're saying, and they will be less willing to take it. There was some nonsensical arguments like, oh, if we allow this exception, people will be trying to get COVID on purpose to avoid vaccination. By the way, precisely the opposite happened. In fact, I've seen many comments in the internet saying that as soon as they start downplaying natural immunity, I realized that the whole narrative is nonsense. I realized that they're lying to us, and it means they're probably lying us way more, right? And lying us on everything. So this calculation was by itself wrong. And in fact, that's how it always works with government interventions. But here, important moment for us is that not just, oh, it's a couple of bureaucrats lied to us. No. Like the whole academia, the whole body of academia here worked really hard to back those people's claim by scientific consensus, right? There were dozens of such papers done by different people proving that, natural immunity doesn't exist. It's almost nothing. It's like COVID vaccine-induced immunity is 5.5 times better than natural immunity. This actually study by CDC, which I'll also review. So those people who accuse top bureaucrats like Fauci or Offit, Francis Collins of lying, they're missing the main point. It's not like there's a problem here. It's not like replacing them with Kennedy and Jabek Machmuraya, what his name is, will fix the global problem, which is that academia is made of these normists who just stay there because, oh, I want to feed my kids tomorrow. I just need to publish this stuff for this narrative because, I'll get hired by senior researchers. They'll get this senior researcher will get grants. This paper will be picked up by the journals and then transferred to the media. Basically, that's how it worked in this case. The media, and that topic requires separate attention. How it worked in this particular situation, because not all researchers actually jump into this narrative, right? Somebody opposed it, right? It was the goal of the media to pick up the right things, right? And transfer it to the public and politicians, so that the impression of consensus got created, and that allowed the policy making move in their favor. We know that people who get COVID were forced to get the vaccine, so that was pretty sad. Now the other case which I could mention, of course, is COVID vaccine side effects. That was even more dramatic, because the whole purpose of all these people in academia was to cover up side effects of COVID vaccine, to make the narrative completely at odds with people's own anecdotes about their friends dying, this young athletes dropping dead, and they're getting side effects which are completely ruining their life. That's actually my favorite topic, and I will talk about it in great details in one of my future videos. Actually, several of them. Another big topic there is climate change. Let me stop sharing this screen for a second. Okay. I just would like to read you a piece from Plimer's book. Yeah, that's. I hope it will be allowed by YouTube. I read the rules that small excerpts from the book are allowed. It's not like a creators' rights violation. So he's talking here about IPCC, which is International Panel for Climate Change. That's what he wrote. IPCC reports became bolder. The 1996 summary for policymakers claimed that the balance of evidence suggests that there is a discernible human influence on global climate. This statement, derived from a scientific chapter 8, sent the media into overdrive with alarming headlines. Environmentalists increased their pressure on governments, and the public was convinced that the august body of IPCC scientists had given a considered consensus opinion. What was not then was that after the authors of chapter 8 had signed off, a lead author had added the statement above about the discernible human effect and deleted passages in chapter 8 that stated, "None of the studies cited above has shown clear evidence that we can attribute the observed changes to the specific cause of increases in greenhouse gases, and no study to date has positively attributed all or part of the climate change observed to man-made causes, and any claims of positive detection and attribution of significant climate change are likely to remain controversial until uncertainties in the total natural variability of the climate system are reduced." Well, that won't happen because it's just too complicated dynamical system. We have no real tools of studying it. Basically, it's inaccessible for human mass. When will anthropogenic effect on climate be identified? It's not surprising. The best answer to this question is we don't know. The lead author then added reference to his own work, which showed warming from 1943 to 1970s. However, when a full set of data from 1905 to after 1970s was analyzed by others, no warming was seen. The Wall Street Journal, the blistering editorial exposing the IPCC process, cover up in the greenhouse, and a strident article by the former president of the National Academy of Science titled "Major Deception in Global Warming." The IPCC continued to claim a consensus of scientists, despite the fact that UN Climate Change Bulletin in 1996 reported that only 10% of 400 American, Canadian, and German climate researchers expressed strong agreement that is certain that global warming is a process already underway. Some 48% of those surveyed stated that they did not have faith in global climate forecast models, which is not surprising because, again, they can't work. This finding was confirmed in 1997 by survey climatologists employed by 50 states in the US. Nevertheless, IPCC and the media still claim consensus as support for their findings. Okay, so you see the keys here. The key is the consensus, right? As I tried to explain, academia and the media work together. basically politicians and bureaucrats, they create by the government fund demand for consensus. Enough researchers engage in it, through this process of grant committee and so on, which I explained to you now. They publish in the journals, and then the media picks up the right pieces, picks up those studies which they want to show, omit the details which they don't want you to see, like uncertainty intervals, for example. That's the biggest part. Some basically conditions, right, which should be stated, which affect the result of the study. And they give small summary with sensational headlines, and that's how the message is truly formed. Again, the consensus got manufactured by this propaganda machine, and it justifies governmental action. Now I would like to talk about how exactly it's done. Basically, what are the methods there? Well, there are actually several of them. The first one, which a lot of people already know, it's basically what I call sensational fraud. It's like, the worst of the worst studies in academia, right? Some like completely already dishonest people who are trying to jump on hype, get media attention, publish some really, really bad paper, which then get picked up by media, by politicians. Everybody is talking about it. And if you look at the study itself, it just not supporting the claims made by media and politicians at all. In fact, that would be completely fraudulent. But if you do it enough and you multiply it through this media apparatus, it starts to look like this is legit. There is a good example of this, even in Sabine's videos. She made this really good video about cause of climate change, cause of wildfires in California.
In January 2025, wildfires swept through Southern California. Briefly afterwards, the media reported a study had found that climate change had made the fires more likely. I've had a look at the study, and I found quite a surprise. The January wildfires burned more than 230 square kilometers in the Los Angeles and San Diego counties, fueled by drought, low humidity, and the strong winds typical for this region. In 2 weeks, the fires destroyed more than 18,000 homes and other buildings. Over 200,000 people had to be evacuated, 28 were reported dead. Blaming God for natural disasters has fallen somewhat out of fashion, quite possibly because God has a poor track record replying to media inquiries, and so the media instead blamed climate change. Conditions that fueled LA fires were 35% more likely because of climate change, scientists find, according to NBC News. Climate change made the deadly Los Angeles wildfires more likely, wrote The Independent. Climate triple whammy boosted risk of LA fires, study shows, according to The Guardian. Study says climate change made conditions that fed California wildfires more likely, more intense, wrote AP, and so on and so forth. But what did the study actually say? One thing we can say without even looking at the study is that figuring out how much climate change had to do with this particular fire is an extremely difficult question. This is because the frequency and severity of wildfires depend on a lot of factors. You don't just need a dry spell to get a big fire. You also need a lot of rain during the previous growth season. There's forest and land management and the frequency of controlled burns. And the California winds depend on global circulation patterns such as the El Niño Southern Oscillation, whose relation to climate change is currently unclear. There are so many uncertainties. I was amazed that they could say anything at all. So I've had a look at the study. It comes from a collaboration called the World Weather Attribution Center. Their press release from January 28th is titled "Climate Change Increase the Likelihood of Wildfire Disaster in Highly Exposed Los Angeles Area." It says, "We find that human-induced warming from burning fossil fuels made the peak January fire weather index more intense, with an estimated 6% increase in intensity and 35% more probable, and that this trend is projected to continue into the future." This is what the media reported. But where is the uncertainty estimate? Is it 35% with 100% confidence? Probably not. Let's just read the actual study then. Okay, it's 59 pages long, so maybe we'll not read it. But let's at least look at the result to find the confidence level. In this table, they display the result as a ratio of probabilities. That's the probability that such a wildfire happens with climate change at the current level, divided by the probability that such an event would have happened at pre-industrial carbon dioxide levels. They find this ratio is in the range of 0.48 to 3.6 with 95% confidence. They also find that the intensity change in percent is in the range of minus 5.9 to plus 10.5% with 95% confidence. Those results are compatible with no effect at all.
Yeah, you see, so basically this paper should have never been published, at least this part of it, because there is no real claim. The uncertainty interval crosses the zero mark. It's basically like saying we find out that maybe climate change has increased this risk by 40%, maybe even more, actually, yeah, way more, or like decrease them. Just like saying nothing.
Didn't find any reliable relation between the LA wildfire and climate change. The uncertainties are too large. Then they write several paragraphs in which they explain that other studies have shown that climate change increases risk factors for wildfires, and that therefore they have high confidence that fossil fuel is to blame for this particular fire. Let that sink in for a moment. They have high confidence that climate change played a role, despite the fact that their own analysis didn't find any significant relation. As I said in previous episodes, I'm generally unconvinced by this event attribution business. Climate models are no good for predicting local weather situations, do a bad job with the frequency of extreme weather events in general, and the result of the probability estimate strongly depend on exactly how you define the extreme event in question. But this particular study is below even my already low expectations. Look, you all know I'm not a climate scientist, I'm just some YouTuber who reads too many papers. I stand here thinking I should really keep my mouth shut, and I guess a lot of climate scientists think the same. But what the fuck? In any decent scientific discipline, this result would have been reported as not statistically significant. End of story. This isn't an innocent mistake. These are policy relevant numbers.
Yeah, you see, that's important. As I said, it's a policy relevant numbers. It's not like we're studying string theory, right? Where nobody cares. What's the result is, oh, okay, this string theory doesn't really work, and this one works, and so on. Yeah. Here it becomes truly important. Basically, yeah, I think you got the overall idea. I might cover something like that in future videos. I only would like to add that big role is also played by what's called reviews and opinion pieces. Basically, in a review, you could have several studies joined together, right? And you could kind of throw in one really fraudulent which which has really strong result, but really low quality. But it will shift the overall weight, the overall result of the review into the necessary direction. But the confidence will grow thanks to other studies which showed no such strong effect. That basically make this claim look more like a consensus. Like the media could always say, oh, there is a review of multiple articles which in total concluded something. In fact, if you remember the story about Cochrane, well, I don't know how to pronounce this word correctly, Cochrane review and the mask mandates, which was criticized by this leftist academia for including only cluster randomized control trials. Basically, what they did, they cleared out all this biased bullshit, left, basically only keep the highest quality cluster randomized control trials, and after that, they've seen that mask mandates have no effect. And the biased leftists complain about it. They say, oh, no, you forgot to add some our stuff. That's basically very deceptive, because you know that if the overall effect is zero, right, and you have a bunch of high quality studies showing that it's zero, and you add one really bad one, which has some non-zero positive value, shows some non-zero positive effect, it will shift the overall, the answer for the overall review toward this non-zero effect. Basically, because when you add them all up with some weights, the sum of zeros with any weights give you zero, and the sum of non-zero value with some weight will give you non-zero value. So that would be really deceptive. Similar thing happened with what's called opinion pieces. Opinion pieces usually written by some sort of expert, right? Who media also like to talk to, right? To get his expert opinion. He could decide himself what studies to include in his opinion piece, as well as in the review, right? What not to include. And he could mix him with his own, professional expectation, right? Based on his experience. I will show it next time, the Francis Collins, right? Who's in the middle of this COVID controversy. He wrote an opinion piece about natural immunity, where he downplayed it, again, with high confidence, and what his claims were backed by. One in vitro study about COVID vaccine-induced antibodies have better binding to spike protein than natural immunity-produced antibodies, which don't mean anything for like real human. Doesn't prove anything at all. But yet the media jump onto it because he's like a favorite meal, an expert with his opinion. So this is one of the important tools. But I'd like to warn people that it's not all of the tools, it's not even the main one. By the way, here is a channel of Judo who makes reviews of such sensational frauds, basically. So he's doing really good job here, but I would like to stress that it's not enough. Like the main problem is actually not this sensational fraud, because sensational fraud could be exposed, and then all these leftist politicians and bureaucrats will apologize, say, oh, well, somebody is exaggerating things, yeah, there is some sort of malicious actors, but overall, we still have a consensus, right? And this consensus is made not by this couple of sensational frauds. It's made by this kind of normists who just sit there because they want to feed the kids tomorrow, and it's published this huge body of papers on the request of the top bureaucrats and the public demand. here is a review of the scientific misconduct, basically. How it actually, I will try to explain how it actually works. So the researchers decide themselves which results he want to publish, which results he doesn't want to publish. And researchers also decide himself what are the conditions of his study and how he gonna make his experiment. So that's not necessarily a fraud. It's just a misleading choice. Here, for example, here's what they say. That pooled weighted average of basically 2%, but again with high uncertainty. So let's say 1% of scientists admitted to have fabricated, falsified, or modified data results at least once. A serious form of misconduct. And by the way, when asked about the behavior of colleagues, the admission rate was higher, even 14%. But this is like what I was talking about, the explicit fraud. At the same time, up to 33% admitted other questionable research practices. So it's not really explicit fraud. And in fact, up to 72% when there were questions about other people. By the way, misconduct was reported more frequently by medical and pharmacological researchers than others. Yeah, I wonder why. Yeah, and they actually agree with my assertion. The image of scientists as objective seekers of truth is periodically jeopardized by the discovery of major scientific frauds. Recent scandals like, well, I don't know how to read these fake stem cell lines, or Jan Hendricks shown duplicating graphs. This is like semiconductors guy. Showed how easy it can be for scientists to publish fabricated data in the most prestigious journals, and how this could cause a waste of financial and human resources and pose a risk to human health. Okay, a popular view propagated by the media, again, and by many scientists, sees fraudsters as just few bad apples. This pristine image of science is based on the theory the scientific community is guided by norms, including disinterestedness, and organized skepticism, which are incompatible with misconduct. Present evidence, however, suggests that known frauds are just the tip of the iceberg, and in many cases are never discovered. The debate, therefore, has moved on to the definition, the forms and causes and frequencies of scientific misconduct. Okay. Scientific results can be distorted in several ways, which can often be very subtle and or elude researchers' conscious control. Data, for example, can be cooked, a process which mathematician Charles Babbage in 1930 defined as an art of various forms. Various forms, the object of which is to give the ordinary observation the appearance and character of those with the highest degree of accuracy. And so on. Depending on factors specific to each case, these misbehaviors lie somewhere on a continuum spectrum between scientific fraud, bias, and simple carelessness. So direct inclusion in the falsification category is debatable. Also, the negative impact on research can be dramatic. Henceforth, these misbehaviors will be indicated as questionable practices. Okay. they're talking about different approaches. And yeah, well, you could read the whole studies, how they choose. Yeah, that's precisely what describing how they choosing the which studies they to pick for the review. So consistently across studies, scientists admitted more frequently to have modified research results to improve the outcome than to have reported results that they knew to be untrue. Okay, that's sensitivity analysis. Okay, so discussions. Yeah, so again, they're talking about the how do we even interpret what does and doesn't constitute research misconduct. Moreover, 3 surveys found that scientists admitted more frequently to have modified or altered research to improve the outcomes than to have reported results that they knew to be untrue. To some extent, they were arguably right. But the fuzzy boundary between removing noise from the result and biasing them towards the desired outcome might be unknowingly crossed by many researchers. So that's like the overview. By the way, you can wonder, and how are they averaging the outcomes of the studies? In fact, even here, I could show you that it's totally depend on their own biases, right? You determining the weights which you assign to every study in the review. For example, you see here they admit that they get this number, 33% of questionable practices with a weighted average. When, as compared to when they take the crude unweighted average, when they just add all studies with the same weight, the number is significantly smaller, between 5 and 13%, 14%. It's because, again, the quality of the study varies, and they have to have some sort of procedure. We should distinguish high quality study from low quality study. And as you can see, the estimates affect the outcome. I don't know which one is correct. Yeah, as you can see, we basically have to rely on the own honesty here, or we have to check it all ourselves. That's why they say it's so hard to find this type of biases, this type of manipulation. It's very difficult. Most of them will never be uncovered. But for me, even the number 5 to 13% is enough, because that's definitely enough for the media to pick it up and create this feeling of consensus. You know, not reporting these conditions, not reporting the weights in the reviews, most important, not reporting, as you can see, the uncertainty intervals, right? basically, if I could give like a summary, you could think about it as some sort of a situation like this. Imagine you have like an elephant in the room. Of his head. Which basically, again, is an obstacle for some leftist narrative. Right? It could be something like, natural immunity. Or it could be the fact that, vaccines, COVID vaccines caused tons of terrible side effects and the people were dropping dead and all those unpleasant anecdotes. Or that money printing does not fix economy. Basically, what academia does is it kind of focuses all of its attention on, some sort of flea sitting on the tail of the elephant, and they look at this flea under the microscope and produce, hundreds of studies about this flea, which basically means, saying something like, oh, this antibody from natural immunity do not bind that well to spike protein, or like we studied, myocarditis, side adverse event. We studied deep vein thrombosis and thrombocytopenia, and we found they're very, very rare, And now we have hundreds of studies like this, repeating the same conclusions of, this flea on the end of the tail of the elephant, which we found. Then these results are getting reported by the media as a scientific consensus that no elephant exists. Basically, this is some sort of cargo cult of scientific consensus. And these top bureaucrats and senior researchers with their opinion pieces are like the priests of this religion. Those people who don't actually go in deeply like Sabine did and look at the studies themselves, look at the uncertainty intervals and all the results, they're just following this belief in science religion. Belief in science is nothing better than, not any much better than belief in God. It's the same. It's the same religious ideology. Oh, I'm gonna trust the science. There is nothing good about it. In fact, I would like to end with Carl Sagan's video on this topic. He spoke about it. This is the last part, so if you don't, if you're already done and you've already seen this, I guess this is the end. But it is truly inspiring.
My feeling, Charlie, is that It's not that pseudoscience and superstition and New Age so-called beliefs and fundamentalist zealotry are something new. They've been with us for as long as we've been human. But we live in an age based on science and technology with formidable technological powers.
Science and technology are propelling us forward at accelerating rates.
That's right. And if we don't understand it, by we, I mean the general public, if it's something that, oh, I'm not good at that, I don't know anything about it, then who is making all the decisions about science and technology that are going to determine what kind of future our children live in? Just some members of Congress? But there's no more than a handful of members of Congress with any background in science at all. And the Republican Congress has just abolished its own Office of Technology Assessment, the organization that gave them bipartisan, competent advice on science and technology. They say, we don't want to know. Don't tell us about science.
Surprising, the danger of all this. I mean, you know, this is not the thing.
There's two kinds of dangers. One is what I just talked about, that we've arranged a society based on science and technology, in which nobody understands anything about science and technology. And this combustible mixture of ignorance and power, sooner or later, is going to blow up in our faces. I mean, who is running the science and technology in a democracy if the people don't know anything about it? And the second reason that I'm worried about this is that science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking, a way of skeptically interrogating the universe with a fine understanding of human fallibility. If we are not able to ask skeptical questions, to interrogate those who tell us that something is true, to be skeptical of those in authority, then we're up for grabs for the next charlatan, political or religious, who comes ambling along. It's a thing that Jefferson laid great stress on. It wasn't enough, he said, to enshrine some rights in a Constitution, a Bill of Rights. The people had to be educated, and they had to practice their skepticism and their education. Otherwise, we don't run the government. The government runs us.
Yeah, so I hope I made it clear how this propaganda complex works. I know the video was too long, and in some sense I made some baseless claims. I hope I will address these claims in the future. Well, see you on the walls of the Dark Lord's castle.